Good morning, everyone. My name is John Elston, and on behalf of the award-winning UCI Black Alumni Chapter, thank you for joining us today. Yes, we are award-winning because that's how we roll. Y'all know how we do. And we want to say thanks to everyone for making that happen. For those of you that don't know, this series began about 1.5 years ago. Our motto is simply, each generation is supposed to get better. Our webinars and panelists are all UCI alums, and they represent the goldmine of talent that UCI has provided. We've covered a wide array of topics over the time, including COVID-19, educating our children, mental health, so on and so forth. Our webinars are open to students, alumni, friends, family, community members, and others. They are free, and the information disseminated is invaluable. So please encourage all to attend. A link to our previous webinars will be posted in the chat. Today is the kickoff of season 2 in the series entitled Health and Wellness, a Black Perspective. We have another great subject centered around relationships. Yeah, that wonderful topic there. No, we're not talking about love and hip hop, ready to love, basketball wise, but we're talking about some of the joys, challenges, and realities of marriage. To that end, once again, we have some of UCI's best Black alum here to help us this morning. Before we begin, I want to say thanks to some of the folks that made this possible so we can get right into everything. To everyone online, thank you very much. I see all of you guys. See my old buddy Laveda, Dr. Vanessa Gavin Heads. Good morning, ma'am. How are you? Charlotte and some other board members, Deborah. But again, thanks to everyone for being here. We also want to say thanks to our talented UCI Black Alumni Board. They are the best, simply said. Finally, our presenters today, they are some of UCI's best. They're all Black alums. We have 3 talented couples, 6 people, and they are good. A very special thanks and a personal thanks to each and every one of you for being here. Last but not least, your host, organizers, and the 2 alums whose commitment make this webinar possible. And I'm going to start with, and I'm going to ask you just please show them some love. Our first one is our host today. She is a UCI class of 2004 with a BA in sociology and an MBA. She is a marketing professional, so please welcome Ms. Sandra Rosenfeld. Our second host today, and she and the 3 of us make up the trio that puts this on, she is UCI class of 1995. She has a bachelor's in political science and a master's in public administration. She is an associate director of facilities. Please welcome Ms. Arnesia Bryant. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Arnesia, and she's going to give us some rules, guidelines, and all that other good stuff, and we're going to get right into it. So again, thanks everyone for being here. Welcome, and certainly enjoy. Arnesia.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. We will be definitely having a great time today. We will be hearing from all of our panelists, and the moderator will be navigating us through this journey. As we begin the journey, we just want to let you know that we are asking that you if you have any questions, to place them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will get to your questions at the end. Those questions will be transferred to the moderator, and she'll be able to bring those up. And we also ask that you continue to have a good time. Be mindful that our panelists are sharing their personal life stories. And so every road travel is different, and their journeys all lead back to one location, and that's UCI, and that's why we're hosting this. And that is why we chose these particular panelists, because they met at UCI, they're UCI alum, and we are excited to have and see what journeys love and marriage can have for you. And now I'll turn it back over to Sandra, who will begin the program.
Yes, thanks, Arnesia. But before we do that, there's one quick thing before we actually start the program, is we want to talk, just briefly go over the webinar disclaimer. We share this at the beginning of before we start any discussion. As you can see on the screen, we do have a few words here. The few things that I do want to point out and emphasize is that the information we're sharing here, just as Arnesia said, we have people sharing their personal stories. So this is just all for general information purposes. So anything that is shared here in terms of their experiences and what works for them may not necessarily work for your relationship or your marriage. So in other words, please don't come back and say, well, you know, the Howard said this worked for them, and how come it didn't work for me? And the Dr. Lees, they said this, and the Roberson said this. You know what? I'm suing. So please, please, please. This is all just personal stories, so that way we can be inspired, enlightened, and motivated within our respective lives. So just take that for what you will. So we're not going to take any responsibility, nor we are endorsing anything that is shared here. So just want to point that out to everyone. All right. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So once again, I am Sandra Rosenfeld. So happy to be here with you all. So with this conversation, as we mentioned before, this is all about Black love. This is all about Black marriage. And you may be wondering, okay, why are we talking about this? We're supposed to be talking about health and wellness, right? You're probably expecting us to have a conversation about COVID and all that. We did that already. You're probably thinking, oh, you know, we should be talking about general health, like, you know, going to the doctor, going to the dentist, being healthy. We did that already. If you didn't, like John said, we're going to put a link in the chat so you can watch those previous webinars. But as we all know, when it comes to a family and thinking about health and wellness and the general health and the way that the family thrives, we have to look at the couple, the married couple, and see how they are stewarding that family, how they are stewarding that relationship. So it's really important that that couple is engaging in healthy practices. So we figured, let's bring on some couples that we know from UCI, and they can share from their own perspectives as to what marriage is like for them and how they've navigated all the joys, all the challenges, and the realities of marriage. And so that's what we're here for. I do want to point out that as we were going through this process and talking about this conversation, putting this topic together for this webinar that we're having today, we did try to, as we always do, try to have a diverse set of panelists and participants to be a part of the conversation. And so it's not just a matter of when they graduated, what major, what school are they affiliated, or what background or industry that they're in now. We always look at that. And so for this conversation, we did try to recruit a same-sex couple to be a part of the conversation. And unfortunately, we weren't able to, but I just want to point that out just in case anyone is wondering or maybe even questioning that. We did try to recruit, we did send out within our respective personal networks and even posted in social media to put out that call and see if anyone will respond, but we weren't able to do so in this conversation. So I wanted to point that out. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is introduce our couples. So with each couple, please say your names, what year you graduated, and how many years you've been married. So first, we'll start off with the Howards.
Good morning. My name is Tyrone Howard, and my lovely wife is Maisah Howard. I am the class of 1990.
And I'm the class of 1991.
And we have been married 29 years, together for 33.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So next we have Dr. Lee and Dr. Lee.
Hello, good morning. I'm Natalie Lee, and I graduated the class of 1982. We've been married 35 years, 36 in December.
And Lloyd Lee, class of 82.
Nice, thank you. And last but certainly not least, we have the Robersons.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm Jahmeilah Roberson. I am class of 2005.
I'm Brandon Roberson, class of 2007. We've been married for 14, together for 18, and we met at UC Irvine.
Great. All right. Well, thank you all so much again for being here. So without further ado, we're going to go right into the questions. So we're going to take it back, way back in time. So I want to get a sense as to, you all met at UCI. So I'm just kind of curious about that dating phase, right? So I'm going to pick it up with the Robertsons. Y'all smiling, you giggling. So I want to start with y'all. So tell me, who approached who? And was it love at first sight or was it love over time?
Well, I'm going to take this one because she typically doesn't tell the truth about this story. But we actually were kind of introduced, and it was randomly. For those of you who are familiar with UC Irvine, the campus village, apartments. We met in the community center. She was an RA. She was about to go on rounds, and the attendee at the community center that day was a friend of both of ours, and we hadn't really met officially. And so I had just moved in early, a couple weeks, and was playing pool at the campus village center, and she was about to go on rounds, came in, introduced herself to me. She thought I was super cute and wanted to make sure that, you know, I was comfortable as a resident, and if she could help me with anything, she could. Long story short, she fell in love with me that night, and then it was just downhill from there.
No, I should say that, like, I was on duty and my roommates at the time were at a party in San Diego. So I was stuck by myself, and then Mary June was like,
little did she know it was love waiting for her.
Okay. Okay. I'm loving it. I know there's two sides to every story. So we're going to take whatever we can from that. As
one is the truth.
So I'm going to turn it over to the Howards. I'd love to hear how you all started. Who approached who? Was it love at first sight or love over time?
Well, he definitely approached me, but similar to the Robersons, we can't agree on the story. He knocked on my door with one of his friends after I lived in Campus Village, and he shout out to Campus Village, right? And he knocked on the door with one of his friends because I had just taken my trash out, and they wanted to introduce themselves because they said they had never seen me on campus. And from there,
I can't verify that story. I don't remember that story. I have no recollection of it. I will say this though. I pursued her first. She was very difficult and resistant, but she didn't know I was going to persist until I could make her mind. So she ultimately had to give in due time, and the rest is history.
Okay.
So from that, you can deduce that it was not love at first sight.
Yeah, we'll do some deductive reasoning there.
Yeah, she finally came to her senses, and it all worked out from there.
That's great. So I want to turn it over to the Lees. Love to hear how you all met and how did it start out for you two?
Okay, well, I went to a biological science meeting for people who wanted to become physicians, and this was in my sophomore year. And they had everybody raise their hands with all their GPAs. And Natalie raised her hand 3.5 and above. I said, uh-oh, I better meet her, figure out how she's doing that. And so I just went up to her and said, hey, my name is Lloyd Lee. You know, but we both had boyfriend, girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And it just went from there. We became friends. We did things together, but never, we studied together, went out to dinners, but we were never like interested like that. And it just happened over time.
Okay. Dr. Natalie, is that true? Just want to hear your side.
That is actually the true story.
Okay.
And I never tell the true story.
And he never tells the true story. So
that's good. Yeah. All right, we're keeping him honest. That's great. So, so as we pointed out, you know, I'm hearing a lot about who approached who and how it all started. So I'm curious, when it comes to the dating phase over time, you're spending time together, you're having conversations. And so I'm wondering, when did you realize, and I'm going to take this, and I'm going to kick it back to the Lees. So I'm curious, when did you realize that, oh, you know what? I want to spend more time with this person beyond just studying together and then sharing meals together. I want to spend my life with this person. When did you make that realization? What was that like?
Well, excuse me for coughing. I'm getting over laryngitis. But we studied, like he said, we became friends and study partners. We really hung out together. And then the first time he started dating on campus, that took a lot of his time away from me and what we had already kind of set up. And that's when I started noticing that I had feelings for him, because I didn't like seeing him around campus with someone else. And that's kind of how I kind of relate my feelings to him. Oh. I'm so sorry.
But nothing ever transpired until we were both actually single, I guess, if you want to call it that. And from that point on, I guess we were already seniors, I think, by the time that occurred. So this didn't occur like a few months later. This was like a couple years later.
Okay. So back to the Robersons. So here you are, Jahmeilah, you were doing your rounds and this man's following you around, trying to get your digits and all of that. That's what I heard, right? You were just at work, right? And here he comes, right? So over time, you all are dating and all of that. And so I'm curious from the both of you, when did you realize that, you know what, this is my person. This is who I want to be with forever?
I think I think I knew pretty early on. So after that first night, we hung out pretty much every day. We were like inseparable after that. And I was a 5th year senior. He was a 2nd year. And I was applying to graduate school and I was like, you're not going to stop me. I was only applying out of state. He was like, no one's trying to stop you from anything. I felt like early on, I could tell him things and his reactions were just like, oh, okay, like we can rock with that. We can roll with that. And so it was very easy from the beginning. And then when I moved to Atlanta, we did long distance for 2 years. And I wasn't interested in dating anyone else, even though I was in Atlanta and there was lots of prospects. And I felt like it was the same thing for him. And so that really solidified it, the 2 years that we were apart. We stayed together, but because we weren't in the same space, it was really a test of like, this worked when we were together and could see each other every day. What is this going to be like? And it was, yeah, we were able to keep it going. So I knew really early on.
Yeah, I would agree. After that first year, we had to make a conscious choice that we were like gonna actually be committed to doing this because we were 3,000 miles away from each other. And, you know, I had become an RA and was spending my $200 stipend to fly whenever I could to go see her. And so it was like we had to make a conscious choice that like we're going to do this. We're going to try to be together. And so after that first year, I think it was a critical moment. And she mentioned there was a lot of hot prospects, but y'all know, your second 2 years, you're an upperclassman on campus, and my girlfriend was 3,000 miles away. That was rough. I had to like her. I had to want it.
But that's a good point, because that is a testament to your love, to your relationship, because here you are at that age, right? You're so far away, so far apart. And maybe some people are not, maybe I just want to emphasize this. It's not only the distance, but you got time zones. Here you are making phone calls. It's much later in the evening, much later in the day for the other person, or it's much earlier in the day for that person. And here you are trying to juggle your classes and work and all of that. So I can only imagine what that was like. But since you all were able to pass that test, if you will, that's really great to hear. So thank you for sharing that part. So I'm going to turn it over to the Howards. So to Tyrone, you were pursuing Maisah. You were able to get it going. You started dating. So when between the two of you did you realize that, you know what, I am so interested that this is my person who I want to get married to and keep it going from here?
Yeah, I think what's important to note for us that before we started dating, we were friends, and we were friends for probably a year and a half, where we just spent a lot of time with each other. And that was really important because she got to know me, I got to know her. I understood her goals and aspirations in life. She understood mine. We just really kind of formed a really close bond. We just enjoyed each other's company. And we did not even entertain the idea of being with each other. As a matter of fact, when I first met her, she was in a relationship. I think I was in one. So we respected those boundaries, but we were really good friends. And then after those relationships kind of ended, then it became more obvious that, okay, well, we kind of know each other kind of well. I was feeling her. I knew she was feeling me. She didn't want to acknowledge it at the time, but it became natural. So it wasn't like something that was like love at first sight. But after we had been together for a while, it became clear this was someone I could envision myself growing with, starting a family with, and it all kind of continued to evolve from there. What did I leave out?
I think one of the things that let me know that this was a different type of relationship, and not only relationship, but friendship. Like literally, I don't know if you remember this, like I would wake up and the phone was still at my head, but we had stayed on the phone so long that we fell asleep, went through the, you know how the phone has been off the hook a long time. And I'd wake up like, oh, dang, I was talking to Tyrone last night and I guess we both fell asleep again. And this just went on for endless periods of time. And we just really enjoyed one another's company so much. Like we spent a lot of time together.
That's really good to hear. And I'm hearing this from everybody. Friendship is key to building the relationship and then eventually moving into marriage. So then that way you really truly understand who the other is and setting up those boundaries even during the time of friendship. So then that way you are able to learn and grow with each other and respecting the fact that maybe the other person's in another relationship and allowing that space, right? So that's really good to hear. And so I'm going to stick with the Howards. And so one of my favorite story parts that I like to hear whenever I talk to a couple, I want to hear about the proposal. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I always like hearing about that. So I don't know, I'm gonna stick with the Howards unless you don't want to, it's okay. But I want to hear about what was that like, that part. How did that happen?
Well, I'm gonna say ours is kind of anticlimactic. It was not like anything like real elaborate, if you will. We kind of already knew that we were going to be getting married. And one night we were lying in bed and literally he just asked me and gave me the ring. Is that what you recall?
That's accurate.
Yeah.
That's right. We get points for that. We agree on that.
So there was nothing like super major, and which is really kind of surprising because he's far more romantic than I am. And that was really kind of anticlimactic.
Yeah, no, I think we had talked about it a lot. This wasn't something that came out of the blue. We really enjoyed being with each other. She made me better. She challenged me in lots of ways. She's highly intelligent. So I knew I did not want to be without her. So I was like, look, we're going to do this, right? So, I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, you meant for me, I meant for you. And so, yeah. That's the story and I'm sticking to it.
Sounds good. And it sounds like Maisah's standing right by your side with that story. So I'm going to turn over to the Robersons. What was the proposal like for you?
Okay.
Yeah, so we mentioned we were long distance, and so when she graduated from Georgia Tech and I finished at UC Irvine, she actually came back to the West Coast, and I was teaching in LA. I did Teach for America, so I was teaching in South Los Angeles, and I got my first, at the end of my first semester teaching, I got a bonus. We got a little gift card. It was like, at that time, it was like $700. I could do a lot with that, right? And so I actually ended up calling up a close friend of both of ours, her sorority sister and my close friend from when we were both at UC Irvine. I said, hey, I think I'm gonna buy a ring. And I was like, because we had always said if we got through that 2 years that we knew we could get through whatever. And so New Year's Eve, I had already bought the ring. New Year's Eve, we went up to her parents' house and her dad was a photographer. And we were like, let's do a little photo shoot, a New Year's photo shoot. And so we were taking pictures. I had the ring and a little teddy bear. I introduced it as a prop, and I knew there was a zipper on the teddy bear, and I knew she would discover it. And so when she like got the teddy bear, she first threw it, and I was like, "Don't throw it," get it back to her. And then she found the zipper, unzipped it, and she's pulling out the ring and looking at it. And meanwhile, her dad is snapping all these candid shots. I'm making faces, and then I get down on one knee and propose, and yeah.
And I was like, yes. If this is a joke, this is not fun. I just wanted to be clear, like, what are we doing? Is this a joke? Because this isn't funny. Because he does like to joke, and he's like, no, I'm serious. Like, I'm serious. I'm down on one knee. I was like, okay. So we have like pictures of me like looking at it, and he's in the background, like, which was really nice. It was a good moment, and I was very surprised.
That's very sweet. I'm so glad that you went back for the teddy bear. You didn't just
because it was like kind of corny, right? Like a teddy bear, and so, but it worked out.
Yeah. Great. So I'm going to turn it over to the Lees. Love to hear your proposal story. Oh, did we lose the Lees?
No, we're here.
Okay. So please share with us.
My wife just keeps messing with the computer.
I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, there it goes.
Okay, here we go. We actually had both lost our apartments when we were in DC, going to Howard University College of Medical. So we decided, since she was losing her apartment and I was losing mine, what should we do? Because I was looking for an apartment and she was looking for an apartment. So then we got together and said, well, why don't we live together and we'll see how it goes. And if it goes well, we'll get married at the end of a year. So for the summer, she went home and she was working at a hospital. I decided to call her father and I asked him, could I marry his daughter? And he said, okay. And he had known me for a while anyway. And so we got that square. So then I had her mother get the ring measurements, the type of ring she likes and all that. Mm-hmm. So then I went and bought it. And then I set up a dinner, well, not a dinner, a brunch with our close friends. And that's when I was going to propose and give her the ring. But unfortunately, that didn't happen.
Can't hold water.
When she got in, I just pulled out the ring, got on my knee and said, will you marry me? And she couldn't even believe it because I had everything right there.
Yeah.
And then of course,
surprise.
Yeah. And of course she said, oh yeah, I've wanted this forever. No. So anyway, and that's how the proposal went. You have any?
That's true.
It's true. All right, we're 2 for 2. That's good.
It's helping me out. Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
And then we went to the
we had the brunch anyway. But I already ring on. So we threw it in a glass of champagne and we let our friends enjoy the Henry asking.
That's great. I'm sorry. Thank you for indulging me. I know we didn't previously talk about that, but thanks for indulging me in answering that question, because I always find joy, if you will, in just talking about that part. Even though some folks may think it's anticlimactic, I always find it interesting and lovely to hear that part of it. So I want to shift gears a bit and go right into the marriage phase, right? Here you are, you're married now. And I do want to talk about this aspect of the wedding vows. I know for many people, they typically come in when they say their vows. Some folks, they write their own vows, right? Whereas some folks, they say what's sort of like customary traditional, it's like from this day forward to heaven whole, for better, for worse, in sickness and health, for richer, for poor, right? They say all that. And so I'm curious for each of you, what part of your vows has stood out to you the most as you think back? And as you're thinking about it, I'll give you an example. I was talking to a friend of mine who's been married now for about 9 years. He's been married for 9 years. He has 2 young kids. They're all under 5. And I asked him this question, like, hey, I know you did your vows because I was at the wedding. And I remember what you said. It was like the traditional one, right? So what part of your vows stands out to you the most as you are thinking from that day and all the way now? Is it for richer, for poor, for sickness and health? What is it? And he said, from this day forward, that part stands out to him the most. And I said, why? And he said, because I realized in this moment, like there's no turning back. This is it for me. So whatever happens at this point, I am in it for the good and the bad. So from this day forward, I am committing myself. So I am going to do whatever I can in my power to make the best of this marriage. So then that way we are able to continue to love, respect, and honor each other. So from this day forward stands out the most to me. So I'm going to turn it over to the Howards. Love to get your perspective in terms of what aspect of your wedding vows stands out to you the most in your marriage.
I knew you were going to come to us first, so we were trying to get our line together. For me, I can't say that there was a particular part of the vows that stands out most to me, but I think for both Maisah and I think the idea of being together till death do us part was something that really resonated for both of us, because both of us came from households where we didn't really see what that looked like, healthy married couples, Black couples together for long periods of time. So we knew that when we were doing this was not something that was going to be temporary. It wasn't something that we were going to see as just until it sort of fizzles out. It was something that we saw until an eternity. And I think we were committed to trying to break the cycle that's so prevalent in lots of Black marriages that, they start today, they end a year later, or they end 5 years later. So I know for me, it was like, okay, if we're doing this for the long haul. And when you say, till death do us part, you really mean that. I don't know if that resonates.
That resonates with me. I think what stands out for me is for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, when you really think about, we don't know what the worst is going to be. We know what better and what best seems like, but we're never ready for what is that worst, because it hasn't presented itself. And so I think through the test of time, clearly we've seen highs, lows, peaks, valleys, and we've been able to withstand all of it. So that kind of just stands out for me. And obviously, while we haven't experienced any significant health issues, we have experienced family members that have, very close family members, where we had to step in the gap and serve as, caregivers. And so we know what that means and what that might potentially look like had it been one of us.
Right. Thank you for that. Robersons, would you care to share what vow or vow stood out to you?
Yeah, I have to agree. It's not a particular line in the vow, but it's the fact that it's an actual vow that's a choice, right? And then every single day you have to choose that person, right?
Yeah.
No matter what the circumstances, no matter what the situation is, I'm choosing. And I think we recently talked about this, like I saw someone said that, like, their significant other asked, like, why do you love me? And they say, because I choose to. And that's a very powerful statement, right? Because I am, like, no matter how I feel, no matter what frustrations I have, I choose to love you. And it just reminds us that, like, marriage is not going to be that fairy tale that you expect it to be all the time. And you have to actively revisit your vows and make that choice all the time. Yeah. If you are in it for better or for worse from this day forward, right? Like, you have to, like, make that active choice. And that, I think that's what stands out to me the most.
And I think sometimes it doesn't feel like you're not conscious of the choice. And then there are times when it's difficult and you're like, yep, I'm in it and I'm making the choice, even though all of these things are happening, right? Or even though I'm presented with this frustration. And so I think just going back to that is something that we have been talking about a lot lately.
Yeah. That's such a good point that she made about it being a fairy tale. I mean, Disney lied. It's not, it's not a fairy tale. I mean, there are moments where, hey, everything is great, everything's working out. But then the reality of it is that it's like almost like a roller coaster. There are some days you have your highs, you have your lows, and now you just have to just move along on the ride and figure out how to handle all the different motions as it comes along. So That's a really, really good point. I'll turn it over to the Lees to hear your perspective.
You want to start?
No, you can start. Go ahead.
I really think that the other two couples hit some very, I think probably in our instance, very prevalent vows that we also hold very dear. And I do agree they're all very important because it's pretty much all comprehensive. It's kind of hard to do one without the other, really. But for me, it wasn't sickness and health. We have hit some major health issues between the two of us. And I really think that and I think probably deep financial stuff are really hard vows to really take testament over and see if there's something that you can really hold to. I think nowadays a lot of people give up on the easiest of things, but health, sickness and health has really been our biggest challenge. And Lloyd went through a major medical illness back in 2000. And what he went through, I know a lot of people told me, oh, I don't know if I could have been that strong and stayed and stuck it out. And it wasn't the best time of our relationship. We were actually having relationship challenges as a family. And it was no other thought in my mind but to be there, regardless of what we were going through. And it was a long haul for him physically. He's made a miraculous turnaround, but that's really a vow you don't want to have to get to, but it does eventually come. And, we believe in a higher power, so we put God first. And he seemed to, even through those rough rides, get us through. So, turn it over to you.
Well, I guess I can also echo the same things, but you don't really know which one until over time and time has occurred. Mm-hmm. And for me, to love and to cherish is probably the most important now. And as I look at it, who should you give a pass when things get rough? It's your wife. When finances get rough, who should you give a pass to? Mm-hmm. Your wife. When or your husband, when you have a problem, who should you give a pass to instead of making it worse? So when I look at it, it's to love and to cherish and always remember that, because that's what you really need through the entire relationship. You want to have what you had in the beginning every day, and that's the challenge.
Yeah, that is so true. That is the challenge. And I thank you all for sharing those perspectives, because I think for many couples, when they come in, they don't realize that when they say these vows, there's meaning behind it. Like, words mean things. So when you say this, it's truly a matter of like, hey, I am committing to you. So when things get rough, something comes up out of the blue, something that I didn't expect, or maybe I did expect it, but I thought I was prepared for it, but now I'm not. And so how do I handle this? So I'm going to use that as a segue to the next question in talking about handling major life developments. And so there are things that come up in life, some of the things we expect, like having children, right? Whereas, or even having to be a caregiver to a parent. We all kind of expect it'll happen, but maybe not in the timeline or in the way that it happened. Like, let's say, unfortunately, a parent had a major health incident, and now we have to spend more time in their home, or they have to move into our home, right? So those kinds of things happen. So I'm just going to ask that question to all of you. I'm not going to pick one particular couple. So if anyone wants to chime in first, please do. But the question is, when it comes to major life developments, what's one that stands out to you that you realize that between the two of you were challenged and having to deal with that and overcome and work through it together?
Okay, can we start?
Sure, please.
I'll just do something real simple, because a lot of people have challenges with having children. And we had our first while we were in medical school. We were seniors. And like, who's going to take care of them? So we had to find that. Who's going to get up at night when we had to do call? Who was going to be there to take her in the morning to daycare? All of those things. And what I always thought is that the man should help. It should, in fact, it shouldn't even be help. It should just be a duty. So what I started doing was, in fact, this was at her mother's suggestion. I did all the night duty, all the days that I was home, except for the days I was on call. So she didn't have to get up in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
I would literally go get the baby while she was crying, put her on the breast while she was asleep. She'll wake up for a minute, put her on the other breast, get her fed, walk her up and down the hall, change her diaper, put her back to sleep, put her in the bed. And then Natalie would wake up for the 5, 6 o'clock feeding. And that's how we did with all three. And when I tell people that, they act like it's kind of strange. Mm-hmm. But, you know, my kids all screamed for me in the middle of the night. They never screamed for mom because I was the one that got up with all of them. Mm-hmm. Through all of that. I was the one they threw up on. I was the one that they messed up my Armani suit, you know, when I'm going to work. So, you know, I just think that we had to figure that out and it worked out. And I had fun time doing it. It was not a chore. It was not a chore.
That's good. I'm glad you had a fun time doing it because I can only imagine if it wasn't fun, you'd be triggered by that Armani suit that has all that spit up on it. So I can
my son, he walked up to me and he said, "Dad, I don't feel good." Black. And I all over my suit.
Uh-huh. I can only imagine. You gotta love children for that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna turn it over to the other couples. Do you want to chime in? Life developments, health incidents, children, caregiving, financial challenges.
I'll just speak to caregiving. So we have 4 children. And while our children were still in, I think we had some in elementary and one in middle school, one in high school, my grandparents got sick. My grandfather suffered a major stroke and my grandmother also was, she was non-ambulatory and she needed total care. And they live in Ladera. They were living in Ladera and we were living in Valencia. And it was quite a challenge for us we still were both working and I needed to attend to the needs of my grandparents. And luckily I was working for myself at the time, but it was very challenging. And I think communication between the two of us was key. While I have multiple siblings, and I'm not even the oldest, a lot falls on me. He is the oldest and has just one sibling. And we also were thrust into caregiving of his grandmother as well. And so I think he understood more because what happened first was with my grandparents and he kept wondering why there wasn't an equal distribution of chores and tasks and things of that nature. But I think he understood differently once we needed to step in and care for his grandmother. Everybody's just not going to step up. And the reality is understanding the fact that you are only accountable for what you choose to do and how you choose to show up for those that have shown up for you. Right. And so that was a major challenge for us. I didn't want him to feel neglected, but I also wanted him to understand that these were my grandparents and they were always there and they were just a critical part of who I am as a person because they were very instrumental in my upbringing. And so I had to be there. And it was difficult because we had to call on the village to come in to help with our children with pickups because they're grown now, but they were accustomed to being picked up and dropped off by one of us. No after school care, none of that. And so we needed somebody to step in and assist. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shift a little bit and this next question is going to be for the Robersons. what I keep hearing is about communication. And we all know communication is very important. And it's not just a matter of, okay, I said this, or I heard you say that. It's really about sort of processing it all. And so what I mean by that is I want to shift that. One aspect of communication is like sort of like setting up boundaries. Boundaries in terms of what is shared or what is off limits in terms of what you communicate with others. So for example, what do you share or not share on social media, right? About your marriage, about your families. What is shared and not shared with family, right? What is not shared or can't be shared with your friends. So I'm curious from your perspective, when it comes to the boundaries in terms of what is off limits, how did you all navigate that and talk about that?
Okay, yeah. So we established very early in our relationship this concept we call no biz in the streets, right? Like we don't put our business in the street to everybody. If you mad at me, we mad at each other. That's somewhat we have to navigate together. And we were also pretty strategic, and we have, you know, we constantly come back to this, is like this concept of leave and cleave. Like I left Irvine, when I went to Irvine and then I went to LA, I haven't moved back with my parents in San Diego since I graduated from high school. And likewise, her family's in the Bay Area. And so when we started to decide, like, where do we want to settle down, we chose to stay in LA intentionally because it was a place where we could have, even though we didn't have a lot of like family help to do like the childcare stuff and all that, it was a place that was our life, right? And so like, I also always say my wife, my life, like we try to like create our own situation here so that we could go to our parents and get their input, but also leave and be independent enough to have our own relationship separate of our parents' influence. Now she talks to her parents a lot. I don't talk to my parents. I don't talk to my dad that much, but like, and I definitely don't talk about like marriage stuff with my parents like that, even though they've always been an example of what good looks like to me in a lot of ways. I just don't have that kind of close touch with my family. So that's a place where I think we just defer back to biz in the streets. And if it's never going to be something that she talks about with someone other than me that is about us, without us having dialogue.
I think the other part of that is when we got married, we were the first of our friends to get married. We were really young, like early, he was maybe 21, maybe when we got married. So we were really young. And trying to navigate being married and then our friends understanding the difference now in our relationship than what it was before. It was like some of the counsel that we were seeking from our friends was not actually pouring life into our marriage, right? And so I think early on, that's why we're like, okay, it's us, we're in it together. As we have matured in marriage and our network has grown and we have more friends who are married, right, and are in godly relationships, we do have people that we seek counsel from, right? But at the end of the day, we also know that like the goal is to come back together, right? And so communicating outward is to help to strengthen our communication inward, right? And so sometimes you may need to vent something and get the words right before you bring it to me. So that you don't misstep or misspeak and someone else can, but we make sure that the people that we talk to are people who are rooting for us to be married, right? And are invested in our marriage in the same way that we are.
That's so important, making sure that you're talking to people who have your best interests at heart, that want to see you to win, that want to see your marriage thrive. That is so key, because we could all easily make the mistake, sometimes intentionally or unintentionally, start talking to people and they're like, it could just be you're going through a rough patch and you're talking to someone and they're like, well, you know what, why don't you just end it? You're stressing out, you're struggling through it. Why put up with it? The easy thing to do is just end it, just move on. But going back to what we said earlier about the vows, it's like, you can't just walk away. You've made this big commitment. So you got to see it through and figure out how to set up these boundaries so that way it's respectful of yourself and respectful of your spouse. So yeah, thank you for that. I'll turn it over to any of the other couples if you want to chime in on that question about boundaries, what to share, not to share with others.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think one of the big differences, we don't do the social media thing. That's just, I think we're too old for that. But I know lots of folks do, posting where you at, what you eating, who you with. That's just never been us. We kind of keep it kind of close to the vest with what happens with us, stays between us. We don't really share with parents what happens. I think the one thing that does help, and I don't know if you would agree with this, Maisah, each of us has like a close friend that I know she confides in and I confide in my friend, because I think it can be healthy to have at least one other person who you value and that you trust. And I really recognize and appreciate what Jahmeilah said about someone who's rooting for you. And so I have a good friend who I will talk to about issues from time to time. So does Maisah. But by and large, we kind of figure we're gonna work it out, because we're not trying to bring other folks into the situation. Because the minute you start talking to family about what's going on, we forgive. The family doesn't always forgive. And you don't have that extra, stress and drama in your situation. So I think that's where we have been very much in sync, that, kind of what happens in the Howard household stays in the Howard household, and that's work for us.
Yeah, that's such a good point. So I just have a couple of more questions left. If anyone that is listening, joining us, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A section. We'll be able to see the questions a lot quicker than the chat. And if we are able to get to them, we'll do our best to get to them, especially in the interest of time. So with that said, something that I think that is important, not only with boundaries, but just even in just thinking about time management and balancing, right? Balancing time for yourself. A lot of times when you hear from couples, and I'm sure you have all thought about this, it's easy to say, okay, I'm going to set aside time for myself, for my spouse, for my children, for my friends, even for my parents, especially if I'm a caregiver. It's easier said than done. And so I'm hoping to hear from you all, what does balancing time for yourself and others look like? I know we hear a lot about self-care, right? But a lot of times it goes beyond that. It's not just a matter of, okay, I'm going to go get my hair done. I'm going to go get a shape up. I'm going to go do this. It goes beyond that. And so I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to start with the Lees. Since you all have been married the longest, I'm sure this has come up time and time again in terms of balancing time for yourself, for your children, and for others. What does that look like for you?
Well, I would say come lately, this stage in my life, balancing immediate family at home, my husband, and now grandkids. I pretty much have to schedule everything. Everything has to be kind of planned out as much as I can. It's not as much, unless we're doing vacation, planning and scheduling with my husband, but other things like date night or just anything spur of the moment, if we want to do it, we just get up and do it if we have the time and the energy and aren't tired. But time with grandkids, time with my sister friends, just scheduling it and putting it into motion. That's kind of where I'm at now. I might not have been so organized before when I had younger kids, but family stuff, we schedule family vacations. But for cutting out time for myself, I schedule it. Like I might make a spa day with the girls, or we might go away. Like I know I'm doing one trip with the girlfriend this month, celebrating her birthday. And then hopefully planning another getaway for 2023 with my sister girls from UCI. So
nice. That sounds like fun. So the Lees are planning their travel. Sounds like they traveled every quarter. So that sounds
good.
No. Well, actually, it almost ends up like that. But before we did a lot of family stuff in the beginning. We really didn't. I don't think we did stuff by ourselves and left our daughter anytime.
No, not unless it was up my hair or my nails.
Yeah, but she always used to go on every single trip with us. We went on a family vacation where 60 family members went on a cruise. We brought her. All the little kids took care of her. So we had a good time. As we went through time, we used to go to a conference every year, and it had a childcare. So the kids went with us. Yeah, it had a childcare. So they went with us on all the trips.
Yeah, they look forward.
They've been all around the United States, Hawaii, Washington D.C., Atlanta, Las Vegas, everywhere, because they went with us, and we had, I guess, a little time alone during those periods. But we just thought that let's just do the family stuff. And just for the record, see, I didn't have much family. I didn't see marriage. I didn't see any of that. So this was my first time embarking on it. So I had no idea what to do, or no one that really asked. So what I did was just do what was in front of me. And hey, we're gonna go on this trip. Let's go on this trip. Oh, the kids can go to this party at this time. We'll sneak off and go to dinner at this, and that's how we did it. And even now, we still do those things with our family.
Great. So before I turn it over to Q&A, I'm going to open it up to the other couples to answer that same question.
I would say, I didn't know if somebody else was going to go. I would say for us, I know in particular, for me, for self-care, I enjoy regular monthly massages, and so does my husband, because I schedule them. We both enjoy the stretch lab. We enjoy walks, and sometimes we do them together, and other times it's just, I like to just be in tune with my audiobook and myself and just enjoying that. We like to bike ride. And we love to travel. We travel extensively, and like the Lees, we have traveled as family, and we still travel as a family, even with the young adults. But we spontaneously just say, especially while he's on sabbatical, we just say, let's just go. And we just go, and we pick a place, and we'll go for 5 days. We might go just for a weekend. We might go for a week or 10 days. Just depends on how we're feeling and what we choose to do.
That's right. That's right. No coordination of schedules and calendars. I appreciate what Dr. Natalie Lee was saying about the calendar. My wife keeps us on point because we have a calendar right in the workstation that plans all of our lives. And she always says, is it on the calendar? Because if it's not on the calendar, it is not happening. If it's not on the calendar, it's not scheduled. So that just, she really helped to keep us on point from an organizational standpoint, trying to balance all these different agendas and calendars. And even now, as the kids are grown, she'll try to see who's available and whose schedules. I'm like, look, set the date. Whoever can make it, can make it. If they can't, we just going without you.
Right. Got to put it in the calendar.
I love all these stories just because we also live by a family calendar, but I am not good with self-care. I like my version of self-care compared to hers is like, I like time where nothing is scheduled because I have a work calendar. I have the family calendar. We have a 10 and a 6-year-old. My 10-year-old's in club soccer. So every weekend is something.
Ooh, every Saturday.
I like to have what I call chill weekends where nothing is there and I can choose to do what I want without any scheduling. And so for me, that's a version of self-care that I enjoy, but it is in direct conflict sometimes with my wife's version of self-care. And so we've had to adjust to be open to each other's needs in that way and communicate through it, because I need to know that just because something is on the schedule doesn't mean she's trying to overwhelm me. And she also needs to bend sometimes to say, hey, I'm going to not schedule something so that Brandon can do nothing, right? And typically on those weekends, I go mow the lawn because that's incredibly relaxing to me, to just go out there, me and my lawnmower, and do nothing but just cut grass, right? So it is what it is. That's just, but those are my kind of struggles, or our struggles with trying to find room for self-care.
I think the other thing, because we have young kids, they do spend a month in the summer with my parents. And so we get that time. And so we do stuff together, but we will also, it gives us the time and the space to do things separately. And they'll spend spring break sometimes, or a week during winter break with his parents to do that. I think I'm better at, not better. I think I will carve out time for myself. So I like to work out, and that is my time. I go on lots of walks, and then I do regular massages and things like that too, where I will just like get away or find time with my girlfriends, where I don't think Brandon does that as much with his friends. So.
Thank you for sharing that. And there was something that you said there, Jahmeilah, that that actually helps to segue to one of the questions that we received from the audience. And it's about staying connected with your partner. In spite of all of the things that you're responsible for. And you all just mentioned it. Here you are, you have 2 young children, 10 and a 6-year-old, right? And here you are trying to manage the family calendar, the work calendar, and then you want to have time for yourselves. And so you were talking about, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, where it's like, hey, the kids go away during the summer. So when it's not summertime, right? All the other months of the year, can you just kind of briefly share, like, how do you two stay connected? How do you keep the love alive? Right. I'll just expand on it from there and just ask that part as well.
So we do have like a regular set of babysitters that are just in rotation.
Nice.
And so we will call on them, and our kids love their sitters, which is great. They also know that like mommy and daddy want to have a date. My son, who is 6, he's like, oh, you guys are always going on dates. But
Biggest hater.
it is important for us, and trying to like model that for them too. Like, yeah, when you're boot up, you're going to want to take, go on dates. When you have a family, you still need to make time for your partner. And so that is what we do throughout the year. We do, when we vacation, we take family vacations, but we alternate each year. So if we take a big family vacation, then Brandon and I will do like a staycation or weekend away. And then the next year we'll do a big vacation, just the 2 of us. And then that, but during the year, it's usually just like date nights. And then sometimes that doesn't involve getting a sitter. It's like, after we get the kids to bed, we are like, this is our time, right? So what do you want to do? And we plan that ahead of time as much as possible.
I think one of the biggest realizations I had to have, I don't know when we got married, like, because when you're dating, it's just like that, like, I want to be on you, with you all the time, and it's uninhibited. We can just, you take for granted that. But then when you get married and all the life responsibilities kick up, and your partnership becomes more routinized, right? Like, then you lose that kind of passion sometimes. You got to find space and be intentional about it without it feeling like a chore, right? And that's something that we really had to work through, throughout our marriage. But like every year, it presents itself in a new way, where like, I'm like, it's okay for me to be vulnerable enough to say, hey, babe, I know you got a lot going on. Put the phone down. I need you. Right. Like, I need to talk to you, or I need to take a walk with you, or, or she would like, and then also adapting to each other's, like, how we're evolving. Jam gets up early in the morning now. So maybe I got to wake up early to get that time with her in the morning, and just adapting again, because it's a choice that we're making to be with each other. We have to evolve with each other and continue to grow together, as opposed to allowing ourselves to grow apart.
That is so true. I feel like that part about putting the phone down, that applies to any relationship, married or not. Like, we are out to lunch, you're out to lunch with your sibling, with a friend, and they're just chatting away, or they're posting pictures of what they're eating. They want to hurry up and put it on Instagram. It's like, can we talk? Like, are you done? Because you've already posted 3 pictures. I think that's more than enough. But let me not go on too much. That triggered a little something for me. But anyway, I'm going to turn it over to the Howards to answer that same question. Just how do you keep the love alive and stay connected? Because you all have 4 children, right? Did I get that right? 4 children. And at one point, you were caregiving to grandparents. And so just thinking about how you have such a limited amount of time to do anything. How did you find time for each other? How did you do that? Like, what was that like for you?
I think for us, one of the things that helped us, we were in counseling early on in our marriage, which I totally would, advocate for folks to explore. But I forgot which therapist told us this, but just trying to always remember, what were the things that we did for each other when we were first dating? All the little things that we did to make time for one another, all the little notes we left to let each other know that we were thinking about one another, all the things when you went that extra mile to let that person know that you were on their mind, that you were thinking about them, all the things that you did in the beginning how do you still find time to do those things over the course of a marriage? And yes, family and life and work and all the things we talked about here all come into play. But at the end of the day, you still have to be mindful of those little things you did in the beginning that really showed that person how much you cared about them, how much you thought about them, or how much you loved them. And you just have to be intentional. That's why I always tell folks that, young folks who are trying to think about marriage, folks get fixated on the wedding and the big day and the ring, and the reception. But the real work is the day-to-day. The real work is the kind of getting over the challenges. The real work is, being selfless. The real work is being, reflective of where and when you've made mistakes and being big enough to say, I need to do better. The real work is the day in, day out struggle, but it's all worth it at the end because you've got a partner for life. You got someone who's got your back. You got someone who knows you, you can complete each other's sentences. We're at a point now, sometimes we got this mental telepathy thing going. I'll see something, I won't say a word, and then she'll sit and say the very thing I was thinking. That comes from time and listening and learning. And I just think you just cannot take this for granted. Even 3 decades in, you still have to work at it as if it's brand new.
And I would add, I think what both Tyrone and Brandon said, the intentionality, and for me, we prioritize ourselves. And I remember when our youngest was getting ready to go to high school, we had, everybody had started going off to college and whatnot. And I remember Tyrone said, we've got to be more intentional about stealing that time to make sure that we're going out together and doing, things that we did before these people came along. And he was basically saying, we don't want to find ourselves when they're gone, we're looking at each other like, who are you and who are you? And that was so important and crucial at that time period to make sure that our kids had crazy schedules with all the various activities that they were involved in, and just making sure that we found the time for us. And now that everybody's gone, we always find the time for us. We don't allow work to consume us. It's like, okay, it's time to check out on the devices, that being responding to emails and things of that nature, because you can do that all day long, but let's set a time. And one of the things we've always done, even when our kids were at home, we always sit down for dinner together, no matter what. We sit down at that table together and have dinner together. That's about it. Like
that's good.
Priority.
That is so good. It's all about being intentional. And I like what you said about like being intentional with the time that you set aside, not only for yourself, but for your spouse to be together and actually look each other in the eye and have that communication. That's so important because you don't want to end up in a situation where it's like, it's been months or even years. And you're like, when was the last time we went to the movies, or we went out of town, or just even made dinner together? When was that? And then you look up and you're like, I don't even know you. You're like, it's almost as if you're a different person, because over time with any human being, we evolve. We become a different person. Sometimes our interests have changed. And so now it's like, oh, wow, where did the time go? So I think that was very key that you shared about being intentional about the time that you all spend together. So before I turn over to Elise, I just want to remind the audience, we are going to be wrapping up Q&A. So if you have any questions, please put into the Q&A. So I'm going to turn it over to Elise to answer that same question about keeping the love alive. I know you all, for the two of you, you've been married for 35 years. And so here you are, and you're still going strong. What has that been like for you to stay connected? Because I know even for the two of you, one of you has to go out of town from time to time for work. And so what is that like for you?
Well, I'm the one that goes out of town. I just kind of travel. He gives me that leisure to do that. Doesn't seem to mind. He's too busy to notice anyway, because he works like all the time. But I do go out of town, but I'm not too far. I stay in California. So we connect sometime wherever I am. Sometimes it's a good little getaway for him. He came down this way to do this, so we'd be together. So we're down in Southern California right now. It hasn't been difficult, I don't think. He's the cook, so he's not missing any meals. But I think for the most part, how it works is understanding, which I've always had from the beginning with this field, from and he's had it from me. I think, first of all, that's the biggest thing, because I think if maybe I was a domestic engineer and at home, I might feel like, man, I never see my husband, I never get to be with him, you know, if my life revolved around him. But we're both very into our careers and getting towards the end of those careers, but you know, we're just very understanding. When we do have time to spend together, like he's down. We've already been out. Last night we went out for dessert and drinks after dinner when he got here. So we just nudge out little bits of time and wherever we can, really.
And wherever we are.
Right.
You have to do whatever's necessary. Like I said before, I sort of do what's in front of me. When I see the opportunity, we do things. Like when I have two daughters and they both live in Texas, but different cities. So what we will do is we will go to one and then we'll hang out with them a little bit, but then we hang out with ourselves. And we do stuff. We'll go and look at something or go to the malls or go shopping and eat dinner, lunch, whatever, while we're out with them. And then, you know, we'll go to the other city and do the same thing. We'll carve out a little time and go here, go there, visit some people and do some things for ourselves. So I think you just always have to be mindful of where you're at, and that you always should be doing something with your spouse, although occasionally we do stuff with other people. So, you know, I think you just have to do it. And we've done it over time. So we don't really look at it as having to do it. We just do it.
I really like that. I really like the fact that you're saying not only being intentional with it, but being flexible. Just given the fact that here you are, oh gosh, I'm on call this weekend. Oh gosh, I have to go check in on my parents or my grandparents, or here we are, one of the kids is sick. So there goes a wrench in our plans for the next few days. Someone's got to be around and make sure that they're okay, and that they're being tended to, and have additional attention because they're sick now. And so just being flexible to whatever happens in life or whatever life throws your way. I really do appreciate you all sharing that intentionality while being flexible and creative at the same time really does help. So we are going to wrap it up here. So what I would like to do is ask of this last question. And I'll start it off by saying this. As we said, within our intention with this whole webinar today is really to showcase Black love, Black marriage, particularly, because a lot of times in the media, I don't need to go through all of the details, but we all hear it. Just about every other day, we hear some couple, they're hashing it out on Instagram, so they're just all over the place. And it's all of these negative news in the media about marriage in general, but it's particular when it comes to Black marriage, it can even be worse. And a lot of times, not only is it worse, but at the same time, it shows as if like there aren't Black marriages, there aren't Black couples, as if it doesn't exist. And when you do see Black couples, it's always the negative perception. It's always the negative stories. And so our hope with this was that we could present a positive side to this. So, and just thinking about how the divorce rate is so high, especially since as the pandemic slows down and we were all sheltering in place and quarantining and all of that, that's really had an impact on couples being able to get married or even couples staying together. And so I'm going to close with this last question to each of you. And I am going to start off with the Robersons and just ask of you, despite all the negativity that's out there about marriage, from your perspective, what can you share? Sort of what is the good that comes out of marriage? What good comes from it? Especially if you're talking to someone that is single or even a couple that's considering marriage, what would you say is the positive side? What is the benefit aside from taxes, right? Or even saving money because you can share in the rent or share in the mortgage. But on a serious note, what would you say is the good that can come out of marriage?
I mean, there's a lot. There's the whole lot, and we're only, I think we're only starting to touch like what the full potential of marriage can be. And so I'm interested in hearing from the other folks who have been through this a little longer than we have. But I love the comfort I have in knowing that there is another person who I can give everything to. I can be vulnerable to. I don't have to like have a facade with, and who is going to take me for who I am and is building with me, right? And we have this shared trust and accountability in each other. And then also we're building a family. Like I think the thing that was always exciting for me, you know, I was a music major in college, and I was always asked the question of like, am I going to live the life of a musician? Because it's very inconsistent. And I was worried about like, you know, stability. And I was like, I want to have a family. And so like, I love that we come home and we're building for Ren and Nolan, who are our two kids, so that they have a future. And I don't know, there's just some comfort I have in knowing that companionship is there, and that the future and the legacy of our family is like happening one day at a time as we continue to grow together. So
I don't have anything to add to that.
That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I'll turn it over to the Howards.
I would say that, what would I say? Just having someone that is like, he always says partner in crime, but just having that person that is your person, that you can be your authentic self with, and they've seen you in good times and bad times, through a host and array of emotions. And just, we know what health statistics say, just sharing your life with someone is just good for your health, your physical health, right? It adds longevity. So I just feel that finding that best friend, that person that you, when something happens in your life, whether it's something that you're joyful about, something that you're sad about, that's the first person that comes to mind that I want to call them if we're not in the same space.
Yeah, I would just add the idea of just having someone that you have unconditional positive regard for, and vice versa, that knowing that when it's all said and done, you got someone who's got your back, and someone you have their back, and you build something together. And so we have 4 children, but now we're about a month away from becoming grandparents for the first time. So to think that here we were teenagers hanging out in the cross-cultural center to now about to become grandparents, I mean, that's a blessing beyond words. And so to think that you've shared and you've sort of grown and you've loved and you've learned with somebody who, you know, you can't imagine anybody else being by your side is just something that's just priceless. And that is, I mean, I could not have written a better script in terms of what this woman has meant in my life.
Thank you so much for that. And last but certainly not least, I'm going to turn it over to the Lees to share their perspective.
I guess I'll start. I had never seen marriage. I had never seen love. So I had to take the approach of figuring it out for myself. And what I first vowed to do is to do the opposite of what my father did, the complete opposite. So every time I thought about what I wanted to do, I thought about that and did the opposite. And as you sort of learn the other person, you get attached to that. And then what you develop is such a strong bond in different areas. One, just knowing each other. 2, believing in the same things like the Bible believes. Being able to discuss things on the same level, and learning to compromise. And as I said before, the most important thing is love and cherishing, giving them the the past to, to be themselves, and also being accountable. So over the time, you learn how important love is. And of course, love is the greatest of all things. So we always have to remember that. And again, I don't think I could have found a better person to do this with.
I agree with what he said. There's too much more to add.
That's great. Thank you so much. I hope everyone today in the audience, including our panelists, were able to really enjoy this conversation and learn from each other. I mean, I was taking notes. I mean, it's too late for me to go back in time to go to Campus Village to find my person, but but just I liked how we were able to reiterate that, friendship is key, even though you've been married for years and years and decades. It's really key. And also just thinking about that, hey, it does, if you want your marriage to thrive, you have to be intentional with what you do and how you maintain it. And at the same time, be flexible, because you never know the good and the bad things that life throws your way, and you have to be flexible to adjust to that. So with that said, thank you to the Lees, thank you to the Howards, thank you to the Robersons for participating. We really do appreciate your time. And so I'm going to turn it back to John to close us out.
Thank you. And I, like Sandra, I think she said it so eloquently. Thank you to all of you, the Howards, the Robersons, and the Lees. Thanks for sharing. And, simply said, Black love ain't got nothing on us, y'all. To see Black folks and Black love being this alive. And as Sandra indicated, with all the negativity we hear, but to see us doing what we're doing, it makes me feel good. And this is something that, whether you're single or whether you're married, there were so many bits of information and knowledge, I think, that was shared with folks. This is good. And when you look out and I see 3 couples from UC Irvine, no less, 79 years of marriage, we needed hours and hours and hours. We could sit and talk and rap about this, because this is so cool. So I want to say congratulations to all of you, continued success, and much love to all of you. Also, there were 2 PSAs I forgot to mention, and one is at our website. Not our website, our email is ucibac@gmail.com. Again, we do this on a regular basis, and we've done a number of these, so feel free to reach out and share with us. And the other one is that we're going to be doing a mailing list, and we're going to be updating our mailing list for everybody. So we want to make sure that, I'm sorry, it's ucibaa@gmail.com, my correction. Thank you, Sandra. We're going to be doing a mailing list because there are a lot of good things that the chapter is doing, and this is just the one piece of it. But we want to make sure that we keep everybody informed on everything. So again, I want to say thank you to everyone, and to our audience, I want to say thank you guys for hanging out this morning. We know you could have been doing a lot of other things, but we truly appreciate you guys being here and sharing everything you share, and we try hard, and we're going to keep trying harder. We aren't stopping. So to all the audience, I want to say thank you very much. We truly appreciate you.